1. Sorry this is long. I'm hating my life right now. It's also 4 a.m., so excuse any messy rambles. So, I've only been working at this job since October, and it was fine at first. My customers are mostly great, so it helps a lot with staying calm during my shifts. But I have a crazy coworker who pretty much everyone hates. Well, except my boss. He wants her, if you know what I mean. But this coworker is making life miserable. Since I started, she has clung to me way more than I'm used to. At first, it was fine. Then she demanded I work every Sunday with her until my boss made that happen. That's fine, whatever. But then I started to realize none of her stories could possibly be true. You know the type, the compulsive liars. Whatever, I know how to deal with that. Then a new girl started, and my coworker instantly hated her. Because new girl thought she was dating our boss. Coworker bullied her so much that they weren't allowed on the same shift together. Eventually, new girl had to leave for personal reasons, and as soon as she left, I became the new target. My coworker, she's a manager, that doesn't mean much to this company, started barking impossible orders at me, like clearing 2 overly stacked boats on my shift, while being the only cashier in 6 hours for a section I didn't know. She'd be super passive-aggressive, if I was too slow for her liking. We get trucked twice a week, and I'm only responsible for HBA. I ignored the comments because she's literally the only person who has an issue with my ability of being one person. Especially when I have to call her phone if I need help while working the same shift, because she's in the office calling one of her boyfriends. I did snap at her one day because it was extremely busy that day. She wasn't even supposed to be there. And I was working the chemical boat for the first time, and she promised there wasn't any detergent to put security tags on. But that was half the boat. I was too slow again, and most of the boat was overstock. But when I told her that, she responded with, "Well, if I look later and find anything that can be put on the shelf, I'm going to write you up." I was already annoyed, and I admit I shouldn't have given attitude. Yes, you should have. You should have definitely done that. You should always give attitude. But it was a busy night. I was the only cashier. This wasn't my section. She wasn't my manager that night, and I had to clear the boat myself, while she had my manager help her the entire time. And I had just found out my mom had cancer. I was exhausted. Then she started talking behind my back, telling my boss I'm lazy and unable to do my job, while still demanding I work all her shifts. My boss pretty much took her side because he doesn't think with the correct head when it comes to her. Thankfully, another coworker has my back, telling me the truth and fighting for me to my boss. Not in a toxic way, he hates drama but doesn't like lying. Then she started calling me on my days off to get me to come in on someone else's shift. I told them all that if I'm coming in, I want the closing manager to call me, not her. It stopped for a little while, which surprised me because I was actually coming in for most call-ins, and supposedly I was the only one who answered their phone. In reality, when I brought it up to other co-workers, they said she never tried to contact anyone else. And then, without notice, 3 weeks ago, my hours were cut to 2 days a week. At first, I thought it was because we hired 2 new people and they needed days to train, but then it was consistently only working Saturday and Sunday. I purposely ignored one call, one Wednesday, because I told them I couldn't answer any call-ins due to my mom having surgery and I wanted to be home in case she needed something. Finally, I came in on Super Bowl Sunday and my coworker asked me if my phone was off. Nope, working fine. Bill is paid. She said she tried calling me every single day that week, including Sunday, to come in early. My phone only rang once. She again made passive-aggressive marks, which my roommate heard as he was buying something. Then let me know that the reason I had my hours cut was because I didn't answer her numerous calls that week, which meant I clearly didn't want those hours. Later that night, she showed me her proof, but it was only the 1 missed call from Wednesday, so it was a lie. But my boss cut my hours without even speaking to me, just taking her word for it. That night, as she dropped me off at my house, she told me that if I didn't answer my phone, she'd show up at my house and make me come to work because she knew I'd want that. Then texted me at midnight that she hoped one of the new girls got fired so I could work with her instead. My boss does not care that this is happening. He even knows she said she'd come to my house and literally challenged her with it. Our district manager comes in every week and he knows yet still doesn't care. He thinks I'm the bad worker. Coworker even tried to turn another manager against me, but this same coworker just started training to become a GM and get her own store, and said she's desperately trying to get me to work for her instead. Other things she's lied about is having 8 children when she has 6. She's supposedly an RN, but I've heard her give wildly inaccurate medical advice to me and customers. And her nursing job, which is why she says she's an RN, doesn't even require you to be an LPN. She pays her mom $1,000 a week to watch her kids, but she lives in a crumbling house. She has over 100 exotic pets that you legally can't have in our state, but she bought legally. She's been shot and stabbed multiple times, but has 0 scars in the spot she said it happened. She had the exact same cancer as another coworker, in the exact same spot, and is deaf in the same ear. She used to be a huge drug lord and made $30,000 a week from it. Sweet. She once faked an allergy attack by rubbing her neck until it was red, called for another manager to come to the store, an hour later, so she could drive home and inject herself with an epi and drive back to work, and suddenly she was fine. Oh, and her epi was missing, so she had to use her daughter's. Then went back to stalking the thing that supposedly caused the attack. There's more, but I'm too tired to think. Another mild annoyance was when we had to work Christmas Eve. She requested I work it. She wouldn't stop letting people in after we closed, and we didn't get out until midnight. At our store, the latest we should get out is 10:30 p.m. We close at 10 p.m. Also during that shift, I saw we had one weighty stuffed animal left and told her I wanted to save it to buy for my sister. She told me she wanted it too and bought it before I could. She says I'm her favorite, but treats me and everyone else like garbage, including my boss. She has gotten into screaming matches with him over every little thing. I genuinely don't understand how she has a job. I am more annoyed that my boss lets all of this happen and just takes her word for it when it comes to me. I'm looking for a new job because of the cut in hours, but it sucks because I don't hate the job otherwise. Actually, I'd been trying to get this job for so long because it's within walking distance of my house. I genuinely think she's the only issue. Even if I'm mad at my boss, I know he's manipulated by her, same with the DM. The corporate help site to report this kind of stuff is pretty much known as useless. This type of BS is coming from adults a decade older than me. Isn't worth $10 an hour. 2. So I work at a grocery store, and I've seen quite a lot. But this was something else. I'm on the floor for nearly my entire shift, but have to help out sometimes and take over for my coworker, who is the only one on all day. Now let me preface this by saying that I've worked the till for over a year, and the man that this involves, I have served almost every single week. He's one of those customers where you're already walking to the items they want before they even reach the counter. This means that I've had many interactions with this man, and not one time has he been creepy or inappropriate. He's an older man who seems to be a little detached and moves slowly, but again, never really thought much of him. We get a few characters where I work, so it's not really a big deal. One last thing that might be important. I just took in my work shirt, so it fits my body way better than the box that I was forced to wear. So that may or may not have something to do with why it started today. Anyway, I was just working at the till, had a few people in line when I get a regular customer. Strangely, he doesn't ask for his usual but has other groceries. I scan them, bag them, place them into the bay and ring him up when he starts to jabber on about how I'm underappreciated and I should be thanked more for what I have to tolerate in my job. I smile and thank him because it was quite sweet. I don't get told that every day, and it's nice to hear that. However, things quickly get a bit strange, as he then said, "You're so beautiful." Now at the time I was like, okay, that's nice. I don't get told that every day either, and it's nice to hear, but it's a bit, So I just smile and try to get him to pay because he hasn't tapped his card yet, and I'm desperately trying to move the line along. Then he pulls out, "You'll find a very handsome husband someday, and have beautiful children, and if your children look anything like you, they'll be gorgeous." Which, okay, whoa, reel it back a few feet. I'm 18, by the way, and have problems with mortality and the like, so it wasn't great to hear. This will be especially relevant in a sec. So there are two guys next in line, and they're a bit weirded out and start to whisper to each other. And this is when I notice how quiet the store is. And it's all very surreal. Anyway, I'm still trying to get him to tap and move on, but man, he was not hearing me. Then he says, "In another life, hopefully I get to marry you." What the hell? You don't say that to young cashiers. Or anyone. So I'm just standing there, literally shocked, and the guys look behind absolutely flabbergasted. I don't just say anything, and finally he taps his card, so I'm relieved and trying to usher him away when, saying my regular "have a nice day," and he says, "I love you." Stop right there. Excuse me? I don't even want to go into the fact that he came back for cigarettes, but he did, and it was not that bad, but no. The other guys just gave me this look. We didn't even speak to each other. But I knew that they were telling their wives the story when they got home. Anyway, two things. One, is this just another universal experience for cashiers? Or was this just incredibly creepy? Two, what the hell do I do now? I'm going to see him, potentially serve him, every week, and I'm not sure I can do that, but I really can't afford to just quit at the drop of a hat, you know? Hellfreezer's note, you should probably tell your boss what happened, just so they know. I can't guarantee they'll do anything. It will depend on the quality of manager that you have. I'm sure in the old fella's mind he probably thinks he's been very sweet and complimentary, but my goodness, that was awkward, and then when he told you he loved you, it was just awful. I mean, the best response to that is just say, "Thank you," and then pretend it didn't happen. And if at all possible, and there is another cashier on when the old fella comes in, get someone else to serve him. He should eventually get the message that he's been inappropriate, I hope. Best of luck with it, and you certainly don't have to, and you shouldn't have to leave your job for one silly old man who can't keep his wrinkled old wiener in check. 3. I worked retail in a holiday village for 2 years, on and off during COVID. 4 characters in this scene. Myself, 25 female, my colleague Mike, 19, male, a goth customer, 18 maybe, male, and an old lady, about 80-ish. It was during low season. Only Mike and I were working that shift. I was restocking cans on a stepladder, so I could also have a look at the whole store, and he was at the register and restocking fresh vegetables. The uniform was black pants, black shirt, and a black jacket with the logo of the store, but since we never had enough, Mike didn't have one while I did. There were only 2 customers in the store. Goth customer and old lady. Goth customer was in the sweets aisle. Old lady was in the jam aisle. She then approached goth customer by his left with a jar of applesauce and asked him how much it was. He said something like, "I don't know, I don't work here. Sorry." I went to her and told her nicely that goth customer doesn't work here, and she can ask my colleague at the register to tell her the price. She walked in the right direction, so I went back to the cans. And then I heard her asking goth customer again for the price of the jar. Mike told me later she just walked down another aisle, saw goth customer again, and went right to him again. I took old lady to my register to check the price with her, telling her again that there's only Mike and me working here, not goth customer, and that she should come to me if she had any questions. She found the applesauce too expensive, so I offered to bring it back to the right shelf. She cut me because no, she needed applesauce anyway. She's going back to the aisle. Fine. She made one turn and put the bloody jar on the first shelf she saw, and then made a beeline to goth customer, complaining out loud about me, as if he was the manager, and not just a regular client. Goth customer was becoming increasingly embarrassed by the minute. I put myself between them and old lady to leave, or I would call security for harassing a client. She left, thankfully, and I apologized profusely to goth customer. He also left in a hurry. A good hour later, I was at the register, so Mike could retrieve things from the warehouse. Old lady came back. She was here to complain about one of the female employees from this morning. It was far from morning, and since I was the only one that morning, too, well, she came to me to complain about me. I noted at everything she said about me, about how rude and unhelpful I was, and how I tried to rip her off by giving her the wrong price, and how me right now, I was so polite and nice and everything. I tell her not to worry. I'll tell the manager everything, and he'll give the employee a warning. Old lady patted my hand, called me a good girl, and collapsed. I called for first aid, explained what happened, and they told me to call the emergency services immediately. So I did. A guy from emergency services later asked me to describe old lady's behavior before the collapsing, took notes, and left. I don't know exactly what happened to her next as they took her to the hospital, but it can't have been good. 4. So we've been dealing with this woman for a few months. She's one of those that always has to involve herself in conversations. Really pushy, like she's trying to be everyone's best friend. She's also one of those people who always has experience to add to whatever I've tried to talk about, to be polite, and her experience is always crazy, off-the-rails, death-defying insanity. Way more interesting than what I was in the middle of describing. That type. On top of that, she's someone who spends an hour shopping and talking, approaches the counter with an armful of clothing, and then declares that she's not getting 90% off it. And then, of course, she tops the trip off with either paying for her $2.14 in change or not having enough and making me re-tag things. Despite all of that, I've been friendly and polite. I don't, so to say, vibe with her, though. She isn't a customer that I feel comfortable chatting with about what's new. I'm not going to show her pictures of our cats, chat about the audacity of whoever most recently threw a fit about whatever, or complain about the city, electric company, and weather. It doesn't mean I have a problem with her, or anyone, with whom I keep a simple worker-customer relationship. On to the happening. It's 4:55 p.m. and we're about to close. I'm sitting and listening to my mom chat excitedly with someone while we're checking them out. She's big on efficiency, and people often ask about the things she's done to the building. If they're curious or do similar things, she tends to gush a bit and ask questions. I don't interrupt because it's nice to hear her excited. Then this woman comes in. Right off the bat, she's got bad vibes. She's cussing angrily at someone on the phone. I speak up and say we're about to shut it down, but she says she's just looking for gloves, so I give her the okay and continue what I was doing. After a couple of minutes, she walks towards me and says, "Doesn't look like your mom's in much of a hurry." I stand up and ask if she's ready, but she's headed to a display with earrings. She asks if we have any hoops. Hoops? We probably don't have many in that particular case, since they're harder to display on those You've got a couple in here. Okay. Are you wanting to take a closer look at any of them? Then she starts talking about some other store no longer having hoops, and it's terrible because they're staple. All I can respond with is a simple, because I really don't care about earrings. Beyond admiring cute and pretty ones. My ears are solid, so I don't have much to say in this conversation. I'm also very much picking up on her tone, and I can tell that she's mad and throwing jabs, but I've remained polite. You know, you and your mom are both, really quiet, weirdly quiet, except for sometimes I've seen both of you really talkative, but never with me. Why is that? I'm quite taken aback. Exasperated is the worst I've ever been with her, and it was when she had a pile of things for me to put back. Never rude or even unfriendly. I just don't have the social battery level needed to meet her chatty Cathy requirements, apparently. Before I can figure out how to respond, she follows up with, "I'm just asking a question." I don't like the question. Well, you don't have to like it, I'm just asking it. At this point, I'm done. We also don't have to sell you anything. You can't do that, that's illegal. It's illegal to... You know what? You can keep your stuff. She said that a bit more colorfully. She then dropped the 2 $1 items she had onto the ground. I gave a chipper, "Okay," while I grabbed them to put them back. I'm honestly kind of disappointed that she stopped. I was ready to make it crystal clear that she was completely incorrect and that we had every right to refuse any sale of any item for any reason. I'm glad I shielded my mom's excitement about water collection from the women's negativity. 5. If I had a nickel for every time I was somehow mistaken for an employee at the exact same red retail store with the letter C, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Yes, at the same red retail store, I was confused for an employee, despite not being dressed like one. Twice, a year or 2 apart. Now, these stories aren't crazy or dramatic, they were actually short and quick. Disappointing for you, but quite a relief for me. The employees at this store wear red vests with the company logo on them. Both these times I wore a bright neon green jacket and jeans, nothing that resembled what the employees wear at the store. One year, my parents and I were on our way to the registers to pay for our stuff, when my mom suddenly let me know she forgot one more item, toilet paper I think it was, so I was asked to rush back to get a pack of them. As I was making my way back to the registers, some old lady got my attention, asking me why I was holding a pack of toilet paper. I stopped in my tracks and responded, "What?" She then asked me where something was, I don't remember what. Because I was in a hurry to get back to the registers and she caught me off guard with her question, my mind was scrambling, not knowing how to react or what to respond, so I just said a simple, "I don't know." There was a second or two between us, with the lady staring at me and me staring back. She then let out a small, "Oh," and walked away. At the moment I was confused at what just happened, but then immediately theorized that she probably thought I was either an employee who worked in this area of the store, or some kind of delivery person who fetched items for customers, which may explain why she originally asked me why I was holding toilet paper, as if that wasn't something I was supposed to have with me. And given how I was dressed at the time, it might have dawned on her that I wasn't the person she thought she was talking to. About a year later, it happened again, though not quite the same as the first time. I once again was wearing my bright neon green jacket, walking around roughly the exact same spot in the store looking for some items. A blonde lady walked up to me and was beginning to ask me a question, but then she stopped herself and asked, "Do you work here?" I simply replied, "Nope," while shaking my head. The lady said, "Oh, okay, sorry," and walked away. Yeah, that wasn't so crazy, but it was still weird to me that this was the second time in the same store, roughly in the same spot, that I was confused for someone who was working there, even though I looked nothing like an employee. So those were the two times I was mistaken for someone who worked at that store. I know they weren't crazy like some other stories, but perhaps you got some amusement out of it. Hellfreezer's note, perhaps you're trapped in a low-budget version of The Shining, and although you think you're just there temporarily to do a bit of shopping, that, in reality, you've always worked there. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail, episode 225. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button if you'd be so good. That is how we let the YouTube algorithm know that you like the video and that the video is worth recommending to other people. And that's essentially how it works. If the algorithm doesn't get fed all the information it needs to recommend videos, it doesn't recommend them. Sometimes even to my own subscribers. Actually, oftentimes even to my own subscribers. If you look at the number of people that are subscribed that are watching, it's actually way lower than you'd think. It's very bad. Anyway, moving on. If you'd like to support the channel, then do support me on my Patreon page, which is linked for you in the description. As little as $1 a month helps. Other ways to support are you can buy yourself some merchandise, or you can leave a one-time tip by clicking on the heart with a $sign underneath the video. Righty, let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day, and today's question is... This one might be a little bit niche, but I'm curious on your opinions of it. I have pretty good quality sound panels on my wall for sound treating the room, but I feel like I need to do more. Currently, the only thing I can do that would be more is the ceiling and the door, and possibly put pillows around the microphone. So I'm curious, those of you who have had to sound treat a space, whether you record yourself or maybe you work from home and you just wanted it to sound nice when you're doing Zoom meetings and such, have you found that those foam tiles that you see everybody and their uncle who has, have you found they're actually effective for you? And if so, what thickness is good? The 1 inch thick ones I don't think are very good, and certain types of foam aren't very good. So I'm curious, those of you who've had to treat a room so that you don't get echo, reverb and such, what have you found has worked best for you? Opinions are welcome. Okay, let's see. Let's move on to Hellfreezer's answer of the day from a previous video. I think this was decorating related. It was about the next time you decorate, have you picked out what you'd like to do? Today's answer comes from, let's see. It was, Today's answer comes from Toria Mansfield. I have plans to repaint the interior and exterior of my house this summer. House exterior will be white, interior will be assorted shades depending on how I feel. Thank you very much for your answer, Toria Mansfield. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.